क्या सब्सटैंटिव नहीं, ड्यू प्रोसेस ऑफ लॉ जरूर है सब्सटैंटिव नाउ ऑल जस्ट वन मोर थिंग वी कैन नॉट वी विल डिस्कस आफ्टर द क्लास not be enforced in any court, but it shall. Singh Rajput case happened throughout the year. Judicial custody and police custody was in news. So immediately UPSC asked the question: difference between judicial custody and police custody. So news while reading newspaper, all those key terms which are appearing in newspaper, time and again, you have to have an idea about the same and not what is given in the textbook and the material, but also the things which you can search on internet from standard sources on your own. I'll give you 10 more examples. For example, UPSC asked a question related to the what you call the Prevention of Terrorism Act. Or classic example, they asked the question on that Article 22 ka ek interpretation they asked. So conventionally, the question which is not what is bail? What is bail? You need to understand. Just एक example देता हूँ. Section 6 of the Bharatiya नागरिक सुरक्षा संहिता इज टाइप्स ऑफ कोर्ट्स, टाइप्स ऑफ क्रिमिनल कोर्ट्स. अब टाइप्स ऑफ क्रिमिनल कोर्ट में जुडिशियल मैजिस्ट्रेट फर्स्ट क्लास, जुडिशियल मैजिस्ट्रेट सेकंड क्लास, कोर्ट ऑफ सेशन, लास्ट में दे हैव गिवन कोर्ट ऑफ एग्जीक्यूटिव मैजिस्ट्रेट. Executive magistrate. Now, please understand, what does the executive magistrate do? What is the powers of executive magistrate? How the executive magistrate court runs? Section 105, which is famous in the court of executive. This will not ask, but 100% separation of powers you should know about. They can say what are the temple. 5 minutes back, a girl was asking, we have started a batch, ki, sir, what is executive magistrate? So, see, if you see, mostly magistrates enjoy criminal powers, up to 2 years, up to 1 year, judicial magistrate second class, up to 3 years, judicial magistrate first class, up to 7 years, punishment can be given by CJM. But executive magistrate kya hai? Magisterial powers not enjoyed by the judiciary, but enjoyed by the executive. Usually judicial powers are only enjoyed by the judiciary, not by the executive. But executive magistrate, the very name says that he is a magistrate, but he is not a magistrate who is part of the judiciary. He is part of the executive. So don't you think you are preparing for state PSC and UPSC primarily? So you should not know that executive, you will become in state, they make executive magistrate. So they also are magistrate, but they are not from judicial size. They are from executive. Ab jaise Article 50 of the Constitution. So these things will not be mentioned in book. Ab jaise everybody sitting in this class knows Article 50. I'll come to these questions. These are very easy questions. Okay. But the purpose is you should know what to do in next 40 days. Okay. So we'll see all the topics, questions that can. Aap mujhe bataiye, who doesn't know Article 50? Who doesn't know Article? Everybody who has ever, even the person who is conducting Xerox at Old Rajendra Nagar, he will also say Article 50 is separation of judiciary from executive. You go and read Article 50, it says the state shall take steps to separate judiciary from executive. This UPSC will never ask. From lower divisional clerk to SSC to state PSC to other exams where in insurance exam, bank exam, they will ask what is Article 50. Uske baad it says, the state shall take steps to separate judiciary from executive in the public services of the state. In the public services of the state ka matlab hai ki the civil servant should not enjoy judicial powers. So pehle, before independence, the state PCS officers used to be appointed as railway magistrate. State PCS officers were appointed as railway magistrate. Now, as far as possible, other than few exceptions, most of the judicial powers have been taken away from executive people, and they have created Bihar Judicial Service. So like you have Bihar Administrative Service, Bihar Police Service, Bihar Revenue Service, Bihar Finance Service, Bihar Election Service, Bihar Education Service, Bihar Welfare Service, Bihar Supply Service, Bihar Probation Service. Like you have the civil side. On the flip side, on the judicial side, you have Bihar Judicial Services. Why? Because the Constitution of India says in Article 50 of the Constitution, the state shall take steps to separate judiciary from executive. This is a factual information which everybody will know. But the second part says in the public services of the state. So as far as possible, in the public services, there should be separation of powers between judiciary and the executive, even at the ground level. So most of the judicial powers have been taken away from the magistrate. Now the executive magistrate, IAS and PCS officers enjoy judicial powers, but they enjoy very, very limited judicial powers. Most of the judicial powers have been taken away from them. Now it is available to the judicial magistrates who come from the state judicial service, higher judicial service, and further you have constitutional courts, Article 217 High Court and Article 124 Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court and the High Court. So they do not expect you to know the powers of executive magistrate, but 100% they expect you to know the doctrine of separation of powers. Now listen, in that web series, aspirant nahi, quota factory. He gives 25 questions to the students. Okay. So 25 question mein the 17 or 18 questions were lifted from a standard textbook. So the student answers those 17 questions, copying it from the textbook. But 7 questions he is not able to answer. He asked why. He said, why? Because I have framed this question. So those questions which are already given in the book, which are already given in the material or any literature that has been produced by any institute, that will directly be asked and you will answer. Lekin undoubtedly there will be 5-7 questions which are framed by UPSC. If I am given a choice and of course time, I can easily frame 100 questions within 2-3 days, or it will take time. Not a single question will be mentioned in any book. It will be based on concept. अब इन questions को आप सही करते हैं, whether you are making these questions correct, that will decide whether you will qualify. There are other factors also, but this is also one factor. So now imagine what is the difference between UPSC and school exam. Ma'am used to give us that Indus Valley Civilization chapter, and this chapter will come. I used to memorize and wait for the day of exam. At 8 a.m. I used to start writing till 3 a.m. But this is not UPSC. That they have designated a syllabus. Of course, syllabus is very, very respectful. I always say it is oxygen. At the same time, you must be ready for those questions which are not explicitly mentioned, which are based on concept. And these questions you will not find in any book. These questions, facts would be mentioned in the book, but these questions would be based on the facts given in the book. Up 2-3 examples. They ask a question, once a speaker, always a speaker. So once a speaker, always a speaker is not given in the book. But once a speaker, always a speaker talks about the independence and the safeguard provided to the office of speaker. They ask the question, which of the following best safeguards liberty? Which of the following best safeguards liberty? Usme A de diya committed judiciary, D de diya separation of powers. Here the questions are, what is constitutionalism? Ab confuse karne ke liye question diya, directive principles provide a limitation on the powers of the government, provide a limitations on the power of the legislature. Directive principles are not justiciable. Option was D, none of the above. So directly Article 37 of the Constitution says these principles are non-justiciable. They shall not be enforced in any court, but it shall be the duty of state to implement these principles while enacting laws. So they want you to know the fact, and they will frame those 5 questions which are purely based on concept. You will be able to answer if your concept is clear, and you will not be able to answer because those questions are not mentioned in any of the book or any of the literature that is. So these questions you will answer. अब इसमें क्या करना है? Throughout the year while reading newspaper, you should be diligent कि कौन-कौन से topics है, which all topics are occurring and reoccurring, and what are the possible. I can give you 10 more examples, but there are many sessions lined up, otherwise I don't have time. So there are many questions which have been asked over the years. So I see the question discussed years, 10 years, so I have discussed so many times, available on YouTube. So 5-7 questions would be directly from the textbook. 3-4 questions would be based on concept, and some questions would be based on concept and current affairs. 1 or 2 questions they will ask random. So these 4-5 questions you work hard so that your concept is clear. Second important thing, whenever UPSC asked a question, other than few conceptual questions, they ask that Attorney General resigns when the government changed, judicial review term is mentioned in the Constitution, what is constitutionalism, what is constitutional morality, what is the role of judiciary? They want to confuse you between judicial review and reviewing its own judgment. That is different. Article 137 of the Constitution, Supreme Court can review its own judgment. And throughout the year, you hear judicial review, which is a different concept. They are related, but not the same concept. So UPSC tries to trap you between judicial review and reviewing a judgment that has been delivered, Article 137 of the Constitution. So these questions which UPSC is asking, there is a reason. Always UPSC is framing a question because there is a reason. I'll give you one example, then we'll start. Last year, they asked a question last year, which they cancelled. Because answer key mein, there were 2 probable answers which were given by the answer most of the prominent institutes. So wo question hi UPSC ne eliminate kiya. That question was that which of the following constitutional amendments were done to overcome or overrule the judgment of Supreme Court, or which of the following constitutional amendments were enacted to overcome the judicial pronouncements in India. Now, option was first Constitutional Amendment Act and 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act. 2 options were easily eliminated. Always UPSC confuses you between 2. Now, the first constitutional amendment, kyun? उसी साल, that year only, first constitutional amendment act, 10th May 1951, if you'll download the first constitutional amendment act, objectives and reason, Nehru ji gave a one paragraph speech. I can read from here. In that speech, he starts the speech by saying that in last 15 months of the working of constitution, certain difficulties have arisen and the freedom of speech and expression cannot be that absolute. Getting my point? So they added few restrictions to freedom of speech and expression, that friendly relations with foreign states. I hope you are understanding. I hope you are under. So उन्होंने नेहरू जी ने 10th May 1951 को while introducing first constitutional amendment का bill, he said that last 15 months the working of the constitution, certain difficulties have arisen and also due to the judicial pronouncements. So we are bringing this constitution amendment, freedom of speech and expression पे we are adding more restrictions. That is relations with foreign state. This amendment, which was passed in 1951, which was upheld by Supreme Court in Shankari Prasad case, but that part of the judgment which imposed reasonable more restrictions on freedom of speech and expression has been challenged 2 years back. So 2 years back, Supreme Court agreed to hear a constitutional amendment which was done 75 years back, which actually imposed more restrictions on freedom of speech and expression. So
you.